Dear learners, this video program meant for practical courses for MA-GMC program as well as postgraduate diploma in digital media. As part of the research practicals, as part of the proposal development, this video is part of the main package. When we are talking about research is purely objective, systematic, scientific. When you qualify research as a scientific, objective, systematic means you need evidence while you're proving something, while you're discussing some major points, or whatever discussion centers around your main topic of your research and should be objective, and we need evidence. In a research, evidence is based on the information, based on the real, objective, scientific, systematically collected information, and based on those information, we are trying to establish the connection between various factors, or we might prove certain theories, or we might explain new phenomena. So, evidence is being collected for the research in the form of information. In a practical terms, these informations are called data. Data is a fundamental unit of any research. The data may be numbers, data may be your interpretation. Interpretation may be through observation, through interviews, through surveys. So there are many ways in which we can collect the data. So research, if you look at the chronological order, research is an objective process. When you are saying objective, you need evidence to prove your statement. In a communication research, the evidence is collected in the form of information. Informations can be classified in multiple data sets. So that is the core discussion of this video presentation. I am Arul Selvan, faculty with the School of Journalism and New Media Studies, IGNOU. And in this presentation, we will explain about different kinds of data and what are its characteristics and how it's supposed to be collected from reliable sources in a very scientific manner, in a very systematic manner. These two are primary qualities of any research, be it in a social science or in a science. So primarily, the data can be classified into two types. One is primary data, another one is secondary data. And the primary data can be further classified into qualitative data and quantitative data. So what is the difference between primary data and secondary data? Primary data, basically the data or evidence or proof or information are collected by the researcher themselves. They'll go to the field or they'll go to lab work, particularly for communication and social science research. The field work is crucial. When you go out of your office, when you go out of your personal space, if you go to the street, if you interact with the human beings, interact with other experts, and collect the information from various resources, including computer-based resources, if you start collecting on your own, that's called primary data. We used very popularly, you must be knowing the survey. Government of India's census is a primary data. And that is a lot of government staff. They'll visit individual houses. They'll ask questions about family members, details about the family. They'll code it in a sheet, and that sheet, whatever they're coding, that's called primary data. And research, we never do the census. We do a miniature form of census. We can't afford to reach out to the population. We'll take a sample. So we circulate the questionnaire on the topic. We'll ask them to spend 10-15 minutes and spare their opinion, information, data and all. So we are in first hand, we are collecting data from different sources. This is one is a survey. Another one is we might use interviews and the other format. So this is called primary data. Then what is secondary data? Secondary data, primarily we are relying on literature. Instead of going to a field, if you go to the field, you will get primary data. So you have to visit the libraries, either physically you have to go to library, or you can visit any offline or online websites, databases that contains billions and millions of literature. When you start reading more literature about your topic, that gives a foundation for you to come up with a research gap. Based on the research gap, you will identify the aims and objectives. So once we start referring more literature on the given topic, we collect a lot of information about the topic from the books, databases, theses, research articles, monographs. So these are called secondary data. So now you can understand the difference between secondary data and primary data. Primary means the fundamental in which we have the control, we are collecting for the research. Secondary means we are relying on some third party, some other author's books or literature. So that's called secondary. So that is a primary division, and the primary data can be classified into qualitative data and quantitative data. What is the difference between qualitative and quantitative? Qualitative data refers to in-depth analysis. We are spending some weeks or months with the community and observing their utilization of mobile phone in their routine life. So we never deal with the numbers, rather than we'll describe all the events or whatever incidents we are observing that. So we'll note down the diary about all the observations. Once you collect all the observation of your 15 days or 30 days visit to your community, that will become your data. That's called qualitative data. And qualitative data's drawback is you can't generalize, because your observation based on small team, small group, one community. So community people might differ from place to place, location to location, social conditions, cultural background, everything. So whatever data we are collecting from a group through a qualitative approach, that data cannot be generalized. Generalized means what the observation may not be applicable to another community or another society and all. In a primary data based on a quantitative information, the quantitative information means we are quantifying the behavior, quantifying the number of hours spent with the library, number of hours spent with the television. We are quantifying all the behaviors. And for quantitative study, we go very scientific manner. We'll identify the population, we'll identify the small sample. The sample and the population share the same characteristics. There are many methods of identifying a sampling. So we can't afford to meet all the members of the community if there are 20,000 people. So rather we will take 200 or 300 or 400 based on the characteristic of population. We will take a representative sample, and randomly we will take those people. We will collect the information through surveys, and we'll ask question yes, no, likely, agreed, or like that. All these are behavioral pattern, choices, social demographic profiles and all. All the details are collected, then coded, then become number. The coded is we are coding all the choices in numbers. So based on numbers, we are dealing with your research aims and objectives. So we are quantifying that process. And here an advantage in the quantitative part, since it's sample based, and whatever the understanding of important results from that sample can be generalized to the entire population, which is not possible in the qualitative. So these are broad outline of research data types: primary, secondary, qualitative, and quantitative. Very specifically, we'll go to secondary data. Secondary data is already analyzed, already interpreted. Means somebody already done a research, went to the field, collected the research, documented, interpreted, and presented in a different format, either in a book format or research article or dissertation or monograph. So secondary data contains the interpretations, contains analytical data, and mainly we apply secondary data for review of literature. In any academic research, some extent in industrial research or application of research in other domains, maximum time is being spent with reading literature related to the topic, understanding what happened so far, then only we can take it forward. So we are not reinventing the cycle again and again. So we have to take it forward to the next level. So something happened, some extensive research studied on mobile utilization by the remote community, and there may be a study from different parts of the country or different parts of the continent, different social context. So what they have studied and what are the main findings. If you understand that, then you can take it to the next level of specific areas. So the review of literature through the secondary data, you can fine tune your research objectives, and that can be a new, unique, and the results might contribute to the existing literature. So this is a main application of secondary data. Secondary data, it has its own advantages and disadvantages. The advantages are it's economical. We don't need to spend in the field because that requires travel, stay, and collecting instruments needs some investment and everything. Here, if you can afford library, you are visiting, spending time, and collecting the data. Or if you are accessing the library through online, much more easier, much more convenient to collect the information. So more economical, and saves time and efforts, expenses. And particularly, it makes clear about what kind of direction you're supposed to take in your research. Because based on the secondary data understanding, you will have a research gap. Based on the research gap, you will have aims and objectives. And with to prove the aims and objectives, you have to go to the field and collect the data. So with the clarity of secondary data, you can collect the very specific, accurate, pinpointed primary data. That's one advantage, I think. And more importantly, whenever we start the research process, we take in a macro approach, digital inequality, and then specifically we'll go to gender gap, then specifically we'll go to the urban rural difference between male and female segment while using the mobile phone. Okay, see that from digital inequality to urban rural and gender divide in the utilization of mobile. So from the digital inequality to the mobile utilization, we are narrowing down to a specific area. The research through library materials, secondary data, it helps you to understand the broad outline of inequality, differences, and utilization by the different groups. So these are advantages. What are the disadvantages of secondary data? Because all these materials are already available online, you have to be very sure about the data comes from which source. Reliable publications, we can make sure that the data is accurate. But in online, when you type some keywords, you will get millions of literature. So this is a quite challenge on that. And data might be outdated. You want certain new areas and may not be available here. Might be that whatever data available with you might talk about 5 years of earlier scenario or 10 years back data and all. So this is one problematic area because you have to take more efforts to take the latest information. And there is no surety about that data, what you want is available or not. There is a possibility that whatever secondary data is available may not meet the requirement of your topic or your research problem. So these are the advantages and disadvantages of secondary data. So what are the steps involved in identifying secondary data? Primarily, you need to identify the source, whether you're planning to rely only on government reports or multinational agency monographs or only dissertations or books or research articles. Make sure that which area you're going to specify that. Each report it has its own unique characteristics. Okay. Research articles are very short and encompasses all the data. It's a miniature version of a dissertation. Within a short span of time, you can cover more articles. In case you prefer to take only books, then you need more time to understand the individual books, and collecting those books should be available, economical, everything on that. So you have to be very specific about the type of sources and what kind of information from where you're collecting it. Secondly, you have to decide whether you're going for offline or online, because now online part is more convenient. Reason is you have multiple options, multiple resources, multiple databases subject to that databases are available to you. But now with the help of main educational regulatory bodies and individual universities, multiple databases are available, paid databases. There are efforts about databases of free full text databases also available online. So compared to offline and online, online gets more merit, more saves time, and it's easy to retrieve data with a few keywords. So in that, you have to identify whether you're going for Google Scholar, or you're going for paid databases like EBSCO, ProQuest, or you're going for the free databases. Make sure that if you are available all the three, you can try in multiple sources, multiple databases, and collect the required data. So what type of data you want and what type of database is required. So secondary. Third, you need to have a inclusion and exclusion criteria. So I told you, if you use online or even if it's offline, literature on any specific theme is numerous, and you have to put the criteria. Okay, I want the literature which is latest, published in the last 5 years time, and should be from developed countries or developing countries, because that makes a lot of difference. Okay, if you are confined to developing countries, okay, and then whether it's from the Asian perspective or European perspective, you have to confine to that. Which language got published, whether you want to have in your mother tongue or in English or other languages, you have to take care about that. Then you have to identify the literature pertinent to your topic. So you need to identify certain keywords, and literature that matches the keywords only we can identify that. All this process we are taking in order to avoid unwanted one. So that's what all unwanted is exclusion. Whatever required for us is an inclusion. So inclusion and exclusion are primary conditions while searching the data. Once you have identified the criteria, then you have literature. But then again, you have to identify the what kind of literature you want. You want the literature based on qualitative data, or you want the literature based on quantitative data, or you can go have a mixed method. So if you take these kind of systematic steps of identifying literature, secondary data, it saves a lot of time, and you can go specific to particular type of literature, and that gives scope for your understanding. And based on understanding, you'll understand the earlier literature about the main thematic findings, methodological preferences, theoretical understanding, and with that you can pinpoint or figure out or narrow down to your research gap and aims and objectives. So that's about the steps involved in secondary data. So what are the sources of secondary data? Primarily, if it's online main databases and government, non-government agencies, if you search specifically, you will find relevant literature. Media information literacy means UNESCO automatically it comes to your mind, because that agency is working very long period about that specific area. Or if you want specifically on media and children, you might go for UNICEF. Like that, there are agencies specifically working on a given theme or given area. So agencies or international agencies or government sector, ministries, specific ministries, it helps you to identify the reports. Public libraries or educational institutions and communication and information resources, including newspapers. These are sources, and what type of material you want. It might be monograph, it might be thesis. There's a one website from the UGC, so Ganga, where if you go, you will find all the dissertation, PhD or MPhil dissertation produced by Indian universities are accumulated in one website. In one place, you will find a large quantity of theses. You can specifically go to communication journalism and last 5 years and want to study a thesis produced on digital inequality. 5-6 thesis comes, you can collect it, and it's online, is easily you can access it. And book chapters, official records, gazette notification, government reports, and newspaper reports. All these sources and literature type helps you to fine tune your empirical research, your aims and objectives. And for personal utilization, all the databases, paid databases, allows personal usage. For free one, no need to worry about that. But whatever the case, you have to retrieve and store it in your system. There's no need to run around after 10 days, after 15 days, and because all the whatever literature you're reading needs to be cited to the later stage. Bibliographic details required, and including inline citation also. You have to mention the author name and the year of publication, sometime with page numbers. So for that, you have to be very systematic while collecting and storing the part. Some of the examples of online secondary database resources are Google Scholar is a one maintained by the Google website, and it's a free of cost. the results shows the paid databases as well as the free databases. If you have the account in Google, you can store those information in your library. Then communication initiative network, that gives a lot of information about development communication matter. JSTOR is a publication gateway. They are not publishers, they are a gateway where all the major social science research journals are indexed, and with the simple keywords you can reach out to the many more journals. JSTOR, JGate Plus, this is being facilitated through UGC and many universities are allowing. InFlipNet, and this is the government of India's own initiative of online library resources, which is mostly can be accessed to university network. Then there is a DOAJ, it's a directory of online and open access journals. It's a free databases. There are plenty of research journals published in under the platform of open and open access, online open access, and very high quality materials are available. So without spending much money, we can access it. And use the any reference manager, whichever resources are available, collect it, store it, and rather than storing it in a system, and use a reference manager, that saves your time, and it's easy to refer the later stage and put in all the literature in proper categories, easy to handle all the data. So the way the research we are saying systematic, the same applicable to collecting resources also. You have to maintain it in a very systematic manner. If you are able to do it on your own, it's good, or else use a reference manager. There is a one called JeffRef. It's available online. It's a free open source software, and which is customized for research work only. So it gives a lot of scope for research scholar to expand their research further, and indexing it properly, and utilization of those literature while writing the chapters. These are resources for your study. You can use it. And now we can go to primary data. The primary data, these are raw, unprocessed data and non-analyzed or not interpreted by anyone. So raw data, and it can be visiting a village, spending time in a village. Through observation, we are collecting data, or we can use a news report articles for content analysis. That also become a primary data. And it can be done through quantitative level or can be done in a quantitative way. The quantitative way, we have mentioned about survey, experimental research, and different types of case studies, all can generate the numbers. Qualitative study also, it's a case study, qualitative case study, and qualitative content analysis, ethnographic study. All these are categories of generating a primary data. These are tools of collecting data. What are the advantages and disadvantages of primary data? The advantages is it can provide insight of more formal research. You have control real data from real situation, pure scientific quality it can be generated. And primary data mostly is objective. The reason is the data numbers generated from the real situation thing. And qualitative part, when you are doing ethnographic study, when you are doing primary data, but doing through qualitative manner, mostly observation based on your understanding. There is a lot of scope for your own subjective interpretations. So you can understand the difference between the qualitative data and quantitative data under the primary data category. And the disadvantages of primary data is it requires a lot of efforts, very rigorous, and it should be systematically collected and very expensive. And this is the major drawback with the primary data, because whereas secondary data, but easy, time, it's less time, and without expensive effort, you can collect the data. So these are the major differences and all. So how do we classify the primary data materials? It can be sources from the field, go directly meeting the various people through interviews or through survey, we can collect the data, or you can go to any particular organization, and because main organization, they collect the data. They have a set of raw data, so we can retrieve those data and we can utilize it. And it can be done through online, it can be done through various media outlets, textbook or newspaper articles or television programs, documentaries, documents, sounds, images, videos, anything we are able to generate. All these are become a fundamental block of primary data. And it can be done in multiple ways on our own or with a team of people, or we can use online tools, online sources to collect the primary data. And the easiest classification is surveys, and quantitative data can be done through surveys, quick and easy to get it. And now we can use online survey forms. Through that, you can reach out to the large number of people. If you are able to do it in online, data can be computed easily, analysis can be done immediately. Some of the softwares gives a basic raw interpretation with the graphs, so that enhance the quality of your reports. And it can be done either through Google Form, which is free, or there are other paid services that can be used, but depends upon your scenario, you can use it, all this part. And similarly, for qualitative study, there's an interview, there's observation, or ethnographic study. Here the data are being collected through interaction with the people, observation, and collecting in notes based on the behavioral pattern. That makes a difference between qualitative data and quantitative data. And there is another method is a focus group study. Instead of talking to 100 people through interviews, you can spend time 5 people or 8 specialized experts, inviting them into small area and spending time 1 or 2 hours, focused questions from the reliable sources. They are experts in that specific area. So 100 people of common people giving information in different types, and 8 experts on the same topic spending 1 hour to deliberate upon the topic. That will gives very rich data. So there are many ways in which we can collect the primary data. And there is a last topic of this presentation is data mining. This is a primary data, how to collect it from online part. With the various online tools, because the online platform produce enormous data, big data analytics and all. With the free softwares, free coding or tools or paid one, you can collect the data from Twitter, Facebook on given topic, given location, and combine all the data and generate a report. So instead of talking to 100 people, we can collect the information from thousands of Twitter handles and the last 1 month's reports, postings, and combine it through software, generate the data, and create the pattern. So that's called data mining. Little bit of technical and technological tool knowledge about tools required. So this is a good area, emerging area, data sciences, data mining, that can be incorporated with the social science for better understanding. Thank you.